Just take a moment and show up in the room. Let your vision take in the entire room at once. Soften your vision. Soften your hearing. And embrace the totality of this moment without interpretation, without agenda. I'm going to open the chat. If you have any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask them. But let this all slow down to a stop. So that you can be in something real. So that you can be in the part of this moment that is not a conjuration of your personality. The doors to eternity open when you stop waiting for the next moment. When you let this be enough. The doors to reality open when you stop all pushing and pulling. When you stop needing everything to be different than it is. The doors to nothing being wrong open when you stop needing nothing to be wrong. talking about radical acceptance of this moment that you're living. When the mind stops pointing out everything that's wrong, your personal life stops feeling wrong. All the things you wish would stop troubling your psyche disappear with a shift in the attention. And I understand that on a different level of consciousness, that sounds like an oversimplification. And that it doesn't sound like a resolution to the problems that life has. And yet anybody I can see in this room, anybody here right now, has had that experience of sitting in this class and reaching a place where even though nothing felt okay in their day, suddenly they were okay. And nothing had to change or get fixed for them to find that okayness. It comes down to you. It comes down to what you focus on. This world transmits invitations to look at all sorts of different things. If you just take all those invitations, you become the world's puppet. We've talked about that before. You cry when you're told to cry. You laugh when you're told to laugh. You stress when you're told to stress. If instead you let the lower invitations pass you by, you start to resonate at a higher level. And at those higher levels, the invitations change. Different kind of doors open in your life, but also the invitations of different thoughts change. There's always a seed that can bring you up and a seed that can bring you back down. And there's more seeds to bring you down than up. But if you have that power of attention, if you have that ability to choose, because you've learned through trial that it is actually up to you, which is a lot more than just knowing it intellectually. If you've come to really see that, it doesn't matter that there are so many invitations to fall back down. Because you just don't have to choose any of them. Choice is everything. And you have the option of living in the power of choice. If you're not ready now, you're attending a class like this, you have the power to get closer and closer to that moment. But you have to see it for real. And you have to see it over and over again before you can find that subtle place within your balance that allows you to not choose the thing you've chosen every time before. It's tenuous, at least at first. It's a place in balance that feels foreign and uncomfortable at first. It's worth any effort to find your way to it. And you want to know what the road to it is. The road to it is actually challenge. You have to actually take on situations in life that would be unbearably uncomfortable without it, without finding that place. In some of my main spiritual training, I was placed in situations where I had to do things I absolutely hated for years on end. And you just have to find different places within yourself to be able to survive it. After a while, some of the coarser levels of the teaching are mastered, and you start stepping into more subtle things, more subtle challenges. I go through phases where I have excessive spiritual rites that I perform. There's one called Tarpanum, I think I've talked about it before, where you spend an hour pouring small spoonfuls of water out of your hand onto a figure that you create out of turmeric. And you do that while chanting different things until that turmeric dissolves. It takes about an hour, and there's usually about an hour of work before it too. You know, you do that in the context of a very busy life. And when you first start doing it, there's no part of you that wants to do it. You don't even fully understand the benefit of it. It's just something that you've agreed to do that's going to take a bunch of time, that doesn't move the needle forward on any of the stressful things that need to get done that day. And you have to find a place in yourself that doesn't indulge in hating it. Because if you don't, it's not going to feel like an hour, it's going to feel like 3 hours. And so you're doing this work, And what you come to learn is that if you just stop wondering how many repetitions down you are, if you just stop wondering how many more you have to go, if you just stop speaking to yourself internally about what you do and don't have time for, suddenly everything that's wrong with the fact that you have to do it disappears, becomes an absolute non-issue. And in fact, the entire thing now has brought you to a place of even deeper balance and shown you something very important. At the end of the day, the problem is not the difficulties of life. The problem is you won't shut up about it. The problem is that you constantly magnify it with your attention. A practice like that brings you to a place of clarity with it that is deep, much deeper than what I learned just from being forced into construction work on a monastery for years. But you look at it, and if the answer is just to stop focusing on what's wrong with that, you suddenly just know the answer is to stop focusing on what's wrong with everything. It doesn't mean you don't stand up for what's right in this world. But you don't let what's wrong own your internal dialogue. It's a rare realization. If you want to realize things that the common person doesn't realize, you have to be willing to do the sorts of things the common person will never do. You have to challenge yourself. You have to step into things that scare you. You have to engage with practices you don't feel like doing. And then you have to watch yourself throughout those practices. It's not something that's learned quickly or easily. You have to get up against the edge of it for a long time before you gain any mastery of the membrane that separates your common life from a life where you're actually free of this internal dialogue. And because everything in this world is magnetized to bring you back in to your dialogue, there really isn't that moment where you can stop working towards it. You're always actively reaching. That reach never stops. The end point is you've just stabilized your ability to reach. And you've stopped telling stories about how hard it is to always be reaching. Anybody who knows me, who knows my life, knows that I have been in that reach for as long as they've known me. As far as I can tell, it never ends. I don't think there's anywhere to get. It just takes that reach to stay awake to what is. Because the pull backwards never stops. You have to always reach forward because the pull backwards is the entire mechanism that we're living in. It's the waters we're swimming in. It's like trying to stay dry in a pool. And in trying to stay dry, you'll get really, really clear on the nature of wetness. You may never get totally dry, but you'll get really, really clear on what's keeping you wet, what makes you wetter, what puts you in a place where it's going to be hard to get any part of you dry anytime soon, what pulls you really back down. If you never give everything you have to trying to get dry, then you'll never wake up to the nature of any of that. It takes your whole heart. The secrets of this world, they don't give themselves up easily. There's a million pop spiritual writers just putting easy answers in books that stop your search cold because you think you know it. You read it and it's just intellectually logical, and so you think, okay, got it. When there's such a depth to any one of those teachings. A spiritual teacher like me can only light a spark. It's your wholehearted effort, your wholehearted reach that gets that spark to turn into a fire. That makes it so that a teaching is cliche as what you place your attention on is what you'll have in your life. Starts to open up its dimensions to you. Becomes something you can start to live. It'll sound small to the average person, but there's nothing small about it. It's everything. It's the power of choice. And the freedom you have to reclaim to be able to live it is something very few people will ever bother to focus on in this world. They'll mistake the invitation for somebody trying to control them, not realizing they're already a puppet. So I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to keep an eye out for the hard things that you can use to find your awakening within. Those things that you're putting off because they're too painful are perfect. Step into them in full meditation. And practice refusing the invitation to complain about them. Practice sustaining your freedom while you're doing those things. If there's somewhere you want to go in this life that you're afraid to go, there's a million tasks on the way to that goal that you want to resist. Those are the perfect tasks. If you want to go somewhere bigger than where you are, you have to actually become the type of person that can go there. So this is not just a liberation of the mind. It breaks your life out of its stuck cycles so that you can become something more than you were. And you know, 99% of the things, you'll get there and realize that you don't really need it. But that doesn't mean anything until you know it. And you can't know it without experiencing it. Some of my biggest accomplishments I'm actively trying to throw away. But when you really wholeheartedly go for something, whatever it creates doesn't die easily, apparently. Still, I wouldn't have known that I didn't need it if I hadn't gone there. You have things like that too. Things that are specific to you, that are filled with all of the barriers between you and your personal power. And all you have to do is make a spiritual practice of walking through those doors and doing the tasks you don't want to do. And the only way to survive it is to get some control over that inner narrative. At first, it'll be uncomfortable, but as you move forward, you will find that place because you have to. That subtle balance where you don't have to pick up the complaint just because you've picked it up so many times before. And when that happens, that task becomes like anything else in your life that has ever been fine. There really isn't a legitimate difference between anything in this world. Anything you could possibly have to do is the same as anything else, whether it's shoveling manure or singing or crunching numbers, those things are not fundamentally different. The only difference is the barriers that you put up, the internal barriers that you put up to those processes. Your system of yeses and nos, willings and not willings. And that system has caged you. You can expand beyond that cage at any time. And that's how. All right. Let's just go into meditation and let that marinate a little bit. Feel free to put any questions in the chat if you have them. Otherwise, attention at the forehead and crown. And let's just sit in this moment together. What if this were it? Could this just be enough? Could you stop looking to the future and past and let this be enough? If you can do that, you can arrive at your destination. Until you do that, you'll never arrive. This week, I want you to find those tasks, those things that you've resisted doing, and make them a spiritual practice. If you don't know what those tasks are, then ask yourself, if you could become anything without any friction, what would that be? And what are the tasks to get there? And that'll give you a whole bunch of things you can work through. And then just begin doing those tasks. Don't even worry about the destination. It's not that important, really. What's important is that you have something to strengthen yourself against. that you have something that you can walk into and actually have to get some balance in your mind in order to move through it, in order to survive it. To gently discipline yourself to stop talking about your fear in your head, talking about your annoyance in your head, wondering how long it's going to take in your head, and instead just showing up for the exact instant of the step you're on. Just the way you do in meditation. You've already learned the skill. Apply it to jailbreak your consciousness. To jailbreak your awareness. To jailbreak the system of stories of your life. To show yourself you can. Any questions about that before we end for the night? Okay, everyone. I'll be here next Thursday. See you in a week.